I'm Kent Myers.
I'm Mick Cornett, and it's time for the verdict.
As a part of its traditional and continuing commitment to public and community service, Crowe and Dunleavy Law Firm presents The Verdict, an objective discussion of contemporary legal issues hosted by Kent Myers. And also brought to you by a friend of Oklahoma Lawyers for Children and Delta Dental Plan of Oklahoma. And welcome to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett. Well, if you're a regular viewer of our show, you know that this is where we discuss topical issues that are of interest to Oklahomans. And you know this gentleman, he's one of Oklahoma's top legal experts, Kent Myers. Kent, what do we have today?
Today we have a very interesting show about criminal punishment. We are going to talk about should Oklahoma be executing the mentally retarded, or as the bill is phrased, those with severe developmental disabilities. We know that if one is criminally insane under the prescribed tests, they will not even be tried. But here we're talking about whether someone certainly will be tried, but perhaps not executed because of mental deficiencies. 38 states have capital punishment. 18 states have enacted legislation that would severely limit the state's ability to execute the developmentally disabled, kind of hard to say. But we'll be talking with two individuals today that know an awful lot about that subject. It's a hot issue in the legislature right now. And when we get through, Mick, I hope you'll ask our viewers to get on the website at the end of the show and tell us what they think.
Sure. Not right now, because we want them to watch the show.
Not right now, that's right.
Mental retardation and the death penalty. Should the state legislature get involved, and how involved should they get? We'll meet our guest and get to it after a short break. This is The Verdict with Mick Cornett and Kent Myers.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
I enrich our cultural landscape.
I help define our quality of life.
I am one of 4,000 artists in central Oklahoma who receive
support from Allied Arts, this community's united arts organization.
I am an allied artist.
In Oklahoma, there are more than 1,600 children waiting to be adopted. They're of all ages, and for many, home has been a source of pain and conflict. They've dreamed of finding a better life and a loving family. Consider adoption. For more information, call 1-877-OK-SWIFT or visit the website www.okdhs.org. Adopt. It may be the toughest job you'll ever love.
And Blankenship has stopped at the line of scrimmage. No gain on the play. Leading at 4th and 7 on the Tiger 46-yard line. 38 seconds on the clock. The Tigers have no choice but to go. Wiggins had to do the kicking. Here's the snap. And the kick is away.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all of the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. Oklahoma Lawyers for Children has over 350 of the best attorneys and volunteers in Oklahoma County who donate their time and services to represent children. For more information, call 405-23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, who's going to introduce our guests in a moment. But Kent, first I want to ask you about the Houston case where the mother is accused of murdering her children. Is there any connection here between what we're talking about?
Yes, there is. There has to be a balancing or an understanding of the difference between being incompetent to assist in your own defense. If you are incompetent at the time of trial, you will not even be tried. If you're claiming that you may be found competent at the time of trial, but you were incompetent at the time of the commission of the offense, then that is a defense you must put forward in the course of your trial. The determination apparently in the Houston case is that the mother apparently can assist in her own defense at this time, but is suggesting that at the time her children were killed, she was not competent. So there is a distinction. But once again, that is a little bit different situation than what we're talking about today, because we're talking about today presumably someone having a developmental disability that is competent to assist in their own defense and perhaps not legally insane.
Well, let's meet our guests.
There's a saying in Oklahoma that all roads in Oklahoma lead to Muskogee.
I've heard that.
And I think we've proved that today. Our viewers in the eastern part of the state will understand that. On my right is the Honorable Opio Toure, state representative from House District 99 in Oklahoma City, but born in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Opio is a lawyer. He's chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, which is a very influential committee in the promulgation of legislation such as we're talking about today. He also serves on the Criminal Justice Committee. And it's interesting that Opio is pursuing a Master's of Divinity degree at Phillips Theological Seminary. Thank you for joining us on the verdict.
Thank you for having us today.
On my left, welcome back, the Honorable Drew Edmonson, the Attorney General of the state of Oklahoma, also born in Muskogee, also a lawyer, a district attorney in Muskogee for 10 years, and our Attorney General since 1994. Attorney General Edmonson, thank you for coming back.
Thank you, and one correction right off the bat, I was actually born in Washington, D.C., but it was not my fault.
Yeah.
My father was in law school, but I got to Muskogee as quickly as I could.
Well, we claim it. You're a transplanted Muskogean then.
Absolutely.
Well, glad to have you back again.
Thank you.
Today we're going to be talking about the propriety of assessing the death penalty against those that are severely developmentally disabled. That's kind of hard to say, so why don't we just kind of abbreviate that as SDD, if we may. Is it appropriate, even though the Supreme Court, Representative Toure, in the Penray case says that it is constitutionally permissible to execute defendants with SDD, should we be doing it?
No, I don't think so.
Why is that?
Well, first of all, we don't believe that a person who has the mental capacity, if you will, equivalent to a 9 or 12-year-old should be executed. We don't execute 9 or 12-year-olds regardless of what offense they've committed, and there are some 9 and 12-year-olds who've been accused of homicide. 18 other states have done it. As we are doing this program, 2 other states are considering a similar ban, and those 18 states that did ban it, for most part, did so after the case that you just mentioned.
The Penray case?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Attorney General Edmonson, what do you think? Should we be doing it?
Well, on the broad philosophical question, Representative Toure and I are in agreement. I do not believe the death penalty should be applied to someone who is mentally operating on a grade school level. And I've worked with Representative Toure on the bill. There's some more improvements, Representative, that I'd like to see in the bill before it's finally adopted, but I support the concept very much.
Well, let's take a look at a graphic to look at a 1999 study done in Oklahoma by Mr. Gaddy. He conducted a survey on Oklahomans' views on executing, as he phrased it, the mentally retarded. And an overwhelming number of Oklahomans, 80.6%, in response to that question said, no, we should not be doing it. Only 10.5% were in favor of doing it, and 5.4% qualified their answer to say it kind of depends on the facts of the case. Does the Oklahoma legislature, in your experience thus far this session with your bill, share that overwhelming view that they should not be executed?
Well, I'm not sure if we share the overwhelming view. I think that the opposite, of course, is that there's a great support for the death penalty in Oklahoma, and I think legislators reflect that support. Most of the legislators that supported House Bill 2635, when it was on the floor, supported the concept. And then there are those who voted against it, also support the concept of not executing individuals with severe developmental disability, but were found it difficult because of the overwhelming support for the death penalty. They did not want to be perceived as being soft, if you will, on a death penalty. So I think it's helpful, of course, that the vast majority of Oklahoma citizens do not support the death penalty for individuals who have severe developmental disability.
You mentioned some statistics a few minutes ago on states that have limitations on executing those with SDD. Let's pull up another graphic if we can. This reflects really three things. The states in white do not have the death penalty at all. On the other hand, the states in yellow, which are number 38, are death penalty states. And the states with the hash-marked lines on them are the 18 states that have, in some respect, prohibited the death penalty in SDD cases. We're almost surrounded, Attorney General Edmonson, except for Texas. Do you think we ought to be one of the hash-marked states or not?
I do, and if I could, I'd like to comment on the statistic about 80% supporting.
Sure.
And it kind of depends on how the question was asked. Most people, when they hear the term mentally retarded, should we execute the mentally retarded, have a mental image of someone who is profoundly mentally retarded or severely mentally retarded. And that's really not what we're talking about here. Someone who is so mentally retarded that they could not assist their attorney or know the difference between right and wrong or appreciate the nature and consequence of their actions are not going to be subject to the death penalty. In all likelihood, won't be prosecuted at all. They will not be found competent. We're talking about a middle ground, above severe mental retardation, below average, below the IQ level of 70, with disabilities as to their functioning in society. And it's our view that they should be punished if they're found guilty of committing a crime such as this. They should be eligible for life or life without parole, but because of their developmental disabilities, should not be subject to the harshest penalty that we have.
Let me jump in here and get us to our first break. Well, second break, actually. We're discussing mental retardation and the death penalty. You're watching The Verdict.
A videotape cannot teach our children to swim. A video game cannot capture the warmth of a campfire. And no TV show nor movie can help a child reach out to make a friend. But a campfire camp can show kids a world of experience they've never known before. For at Campfire, life is not something to be watched, it's something to be lived. The first fire we light is the fire within. Campfire, boys and girls.
St. Gregory's University has been changing the lives of people like me for 125 years. Affordable private Catholic education, balanced with dedication to community and service, makes St. Gregory special. We're extremely proud of our students' outstanding academic achievements and our nationally ranked athletic teams. It's when you help a student build a future of balance, integrity, and service that you change a life forever. St. Gregory's, a community for life.
Yesterday was plain awful.
You can say that again. On Broadway is Oklahoma's premier youth musical theater company.
Bringing our daughter here was one of the smartest things we've ever done.
I've learned a lot. I've gained a lot of confidence. They helped me develop talents I never knew I had.
And it's fun.
On Broadway, Oklahoma's premier youth musical theater company. Now enrolling in Edmond. Call 330-CAST. That's 330-2278.
Every day, in state governments throughout the country, crucial decisions are being made that affect the lives of children and their families. But as this process takes place, children are often left voiceless. When these children raise their hands to be heard, is anyone listening? There are people listening. They are child advocates. Join us and raise your hand for kids.
Mick Cornett and Kent Myers back on The Verdict. This week we're discussing mental retardation and the death penalty. Kent, where are we here?
Well, we've talked a little bit about the legislation that's pending in our Oklahoma legislature, and the author of that is, of course, with us today, Representative Toure. Opio, you're the author of House Bill 2635, and it's had kind of a bumpy road in the legislature, but apparently, at least insofar as the House is concerned, a happy ending. Can you tell our viewers just briefly what the history is that has been up to the time of our taping today?
Of course. Presently, it's in the Senate. We did get it past the House, floor on the second time around by the slimmest of votes, 51 to, I think it was 48. And we're optimistic that we'll pass it in the Senate. The process means that we'll go into a conference committee and work on the issues that were still outstanding on the bill.
Who's working it through the Senate?
Senator Angela Munson is the primary Senate author, but we have some co-authors. Can't recall all of them by this time. Hopefully we've got more since we first filed the bill.
Just slightly off the subject, 51-48, are there situations, do you go count those votes, going in, or are you just kind of waiting for the outcome like everybody else?
Well,
when it's that close?
When you think it's going to be a close vote, you count your votes, and we were counting.
Well, let's talk about that bill a little bit and how we describe what is the definition of someone that is severely developmentally disabled. Can you help us with that, Representative Toure?
Right. Basically, the bill provides two elements. One is significant sub-average general and intellectual functioning, which a lot of folks would identify as IQ. And then the inability...
Is there any number level on that?
Less than 70.
Below 70 on an IQ?
Below 70, which would be the equivalent of a mental age of about 9 to 12-year-old, or functioning on a third grade level. And then the second element is having significant limitation in adaptive functioning, which may be in areas of communications, the ability to take care of themselves, whether or not they can perform various chores around the home, whether they have the ability to even take care of their own bodies, the health issues. So there are a number of factors that are involved in determining whether or not the person not only has the below average IQ, but has significant limitations in adaptive functions.
Well, I've heard that one criticism of this kind of legislation is that it might be faked. Are there any provisions in this that you're aware of that might prevent that?
Well, the requirement that they manifest before the age of 18 is an important safeguard.
These disabling functions?
The disabling functions, and I'd like to see the bill make it clear that that applies to the IQ test as well as the other manifestations if the person attended a school where that testing was done. I would be a little leery of someone who scored 75 in the 6th grade and 55 when they got out and started robbing banks.
Yeah.
I'd be a little leery about that myself, so I'd like it all to manifest before the age of 18 and continue to manifest into adulthood.
Well, let's talk about something a little differently now. Let's get into a little more of the detail where the people like to say the devil is in the details. Let's pull up a graphic and see just how this process is going to work. Under this bill, there really are, at least at the trial court level, 3 bites at the apple by the defendant. If the defendant or the defendant's lawyer thinks that the defendant is severely developmentally disabled, at first it will be considered by the judge prior to any trial. If the judge agrees that that disability is present, there will be no death penalty. If the judge disagrees, you proceed to trial. Second stage, it will be considered by the jury at the sentencing phase, obviously after a conviction. If the jury agrees that there's SDD, then there'll be no death penalty. If the jury disagrees, then you proceed on to the next phase. And the third bite at the apple is it will be once again considered by the jury in the portion of the sentencing hearing dealing with aggravating or mitigating factors. Attorney General Edmonson, do you think that's an appropriate framework to give that many chances to prove that defense?
Well, frankly, no. And this is one of the areas where I look forward to working with Representative Toure as the bill goes through the process. I'm not in favor of the first finding by the judge, which essentially prior to trial. I feel strongly that this should be a jury question. It should be a jury question presented to them at the time of sentencing. They should be given an opportunity to make a special finding that if a person is severely developmentally disabled as defined, then they don't have the option of giving a death sentence. Then they consider whether it should be life or life without parole. If they make a special finding of no, they're not developmentally disabled, then they can go ahead and consider all three options. I'd remove the part about the judge as a pretrial motion and leave it as a jury question at the time of sentencing.
Let me ask Representative Toure really two questions about that. One, if you're familiar, how do any of the other 18 states deal with that first stage determination by the judge? And second, why do you think the pretrial determination is appropriate?
Well, first of all, the first answer is it's mixed. Some states require or provide for a finding by the judge initially. Others will have set up as Attorney General Edmonson has outlined. Reason I think it's important is two things. One is that the judge has been trained, if you will, to look at various issues that need not get to the jury if the judge can't make that determination. Second is just an economic factor. Capital case is very expensive. If there's an initial determination that there will not be a capital case, then you can cut down on quite a bit of expense in preparation for the trial, and even the number of jurors that you have to bring in and qualify. You cut down on the length of the trial dramatically.
Let me jump in here. Ken, I'd like to give each of our guests an opportunity to kind of sum up their views on this subject. We'll start with Attorney General Drew Edmonson.
Well, in the first place, I'd like to make it very clear that not only do I agree with Opio philosophically, I also consider this a law enforcement type issue. The Penry case was a 5-4 decision, as I recall, with the Supreme Court saying that they weren't sure we'd reached a consensus in this country on the availability of the death penalty for the mentally retarded. I worry very much as Attorney General in charge of shepherding these cases through the appellate process, what's going to happen if the Supreme Court switches one vote and determines that execution of the mentally retarded is per se cruel and unusual punishment, and we don't have a statute in place to deal with it. Death Watch has not pointed to a single case in Oklahoma where someone who's been executed would meet these criteria, and I know of none who are currently on death row. So I don't think this is going to impact law enforcement, but it may well impact our ability to hold cases on appeal if we don't do what Representative Toure suggests, and that is take the bull by the horn, get a statute on the books, and do the right thing.
Representative Toure, your final thoughts.
Well, I think it's a very important issue. I appreciate the assistance of the Attorney General in the area. Since the Penry case, 18 states have done this. In fact, as we sit here today, Supreme Court has taken up the issue with the case from Virginia. It took up the issue last year with the case from North Carolina, and North Carolina passed a statute and the case was moot. So it is an issue that the Supreme Court is looking at, and hopefully by the time, within a short period of time, not only will we have a statute here in Oklahoma, but I think other states will also have a similar statute.
Representative Toure, Attorney General Edmonson, thank you both for coming by. Kent and I'll have a few final thoughts on this subject when we return. You're watching The Verdict with Mick Cornett and Kent Myers.
Hello, my name is Ted Smith. I'm president of the board of directors of the Oklahoma Disability Law Center. ODLC provides free legal services in civil matters to people with physical and mental disabilities.
I'm Mike Sykes, Vice President of ODLC. For more information, call 1-800-880-7755.
The Oklahoma Disability Law Center provides high-quality legal services to people with physical and mental disabilities.
Scouts of America, where above all else, character counts.
Bringing out the best in each student. That is the simple goal and tradition of Heritage Hall. The focus on the individual shapes the educational experience at Heritage Hall. Each student benefits from small classes, able, dedicated teachers, a solid academic curriculum, and exceptional co-curricular programs of athletics, arts, community service, and other activities, parental involvement, personalized counseling, and the development of responsibility, integrity, and love of learning. If you want education taught with pride, then you want Heritage Hall.
We're wrapping up another edition of The Verdict. Kent, some final thoughts.
Well, it's a tragic but realistic possibility that the mentally retarded can be executed in Oklahoma. This bill will address that question. I want to pull up a graphic now to show some of the debate that was in the House of Representatives very recently. Representative Bill Graves was quoted in the Oklahoman as saying, "I admire Representative Toure for following his convictions to bring this forward, but this forgets the issue of justice. It doesn't matter if someone is murdered by a rocket scientist or someone who is developmentally disabled. One is just as dead as the other." That shows, makes some of the rather heated and emotional rhetoric that follows this issue. And I'll really be kind of interested in what our viewers think about this.
Well, they, of course, always have the opportunity to let us know what they think if they just go to our website. And here it is, www.theverdict.tv. Get online, join in the conversation, tell us what you want to see in future shows and what you think about past shows.
Yep.
Kent, good job.
It was fun. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
And Kent and I will be back next week with another show. This is The Verdict. This program was brought to you by Crow and Dunlevy, a professional corporation. And also brought to you by a friend of Oklahoma Lawyers for Children and Delta Dental Plan of Oklahoma.